Okay, and welcome back. We are in early August 1852 in the midst of the Crimean War, and we last left off with a strategic quandary on the Western Front, where I wasn't quite sure what move to make. You could probably guess from the disposition of our forces that I went with the most cautious option in this case. The reason being is because in the last analysis we are fighting an opponent which is much stronger than we are. We don't see much in the way of any significant British or French support at this time. And we had nothing to lose from being cautious and everything to gain. We thought that probably this turn Russia would take Plevna. They would press another assault. The structure was partially breached, and they did press another assault. And incredibly, we won. And quite a significant victory at that. I mean, we lost 10,000 casualties, inflicted 9,749 horse, 75 guns, and we took about 12,000 prisoners. And we actually gained 2 national morale points from that defence. That was an incredible feat. Our force that is left is quite depleted now. We have, let's have a look, 13,000 men and 32 guns left in Plevna. Now, based on this, had we have moved, really doing either operation, either of the aggressive operations, it would have probably come off, I think. If we had kind of gone ham and just sort of ploughed into the Russian force from Varna, it would have been successful. I think we would have defeated them, and that force would have fallen back to Constanta, or the remains of the Russian army would have fallen back, and it would have been a pretty good victory. I think it would have come off. Had we moved to envelop, it doesn't look as though any Russian forces have moved south. Our intelligence on the Russian army based in Constanta is a bit more sketchy, but looking at our estimations, it hasn't changed very much in terms of its composition. So we would have quite easily taken Constanta, and we would have trapped that force. But we can still do either of those things now, and we are much better placed. We've achieved force concentration. Our forces have mostly recovered. The Imperial Guard has received many of its replacements. There are some still to arrive, but largely this force is recovered now, its organisation and cohesion. In terms of our order of battle now, our main field army has concentrated, has rested, and has prepared for action. And of course, Omar Pasha is activated because he's an aggressive and serious kind of general. And our order of battle is, I've given the Imperial Guard to Abdul Karim Nadir. Despite his bad showing in the Rumelia campaign, out of our lieutenant generals, he's our most experienced, I would say, and most effective. Khurshid Pasha keeps command of the cavalry division, and we've given the other 2 infantry corps to Ahmed Pasha and Zarif Mustafa Pasha, respectively. Now we have 1 independent cavalry division, 2 independent artillery regiments, and we have independent pioneer, engineer, and provost regiments, plus 2 supply trains, and that gives us a 2% command penalty. That's okay, I can live with that. That's a very small amount, that's within the realms of acceptability. But what we have now is a very potent force indeed, of just under 95,000 men, shade under 16,000 horses, and just under 500 guns. So Omar Pasha is now the head of a very potent force indeed that is ready for action. And the Russians have just experienced a defeat in their second attempt to take Plevna, which has cost them 20,000 casualties and 10,000 horses, 75 guns. So we're now well placed to take advantage of that. The initiative is now very much with us. This force, whatever it does now, I would say is doomed. If it falls back to Constanta, well, my plan now actually is not even to go ham now, but it's going to be to envelop this force and move to Constanta, and that's going to take Omar Pasha 10 days, and that would trap the remains of this force, about 50,000 men, in Plevna. Even if this force takes Plevna, doesn't matter now, it's doomed. It's in a really, really dicey situation, and our plan, if we can, is to destroy all or most of this force, and that would be an absolutely sensational victory if it comes off. That's the state of play in the West. The reserves have been committed. I say the reserve, we do have a reserve still in Adrianople, which has received all of its replacements. We had some wagons which were captured from the Russians in Constantinople. That has also been moved into Adrianople to basically stock up on supplies, and we can attach that to the main army. But yeah, a good round. A really, really good round. Really, really happy with that. As I say, we've bumped up 2 national morale points. It's probably going to mean also that Russia will have lost 2 national morale points, so they're now at 99. I think they were at 104, 105 not too long ago. I didn't want to kind of make any rash moves without full command of the facts. So one thing I did is to sortie the fleet to the northern Black Sea, so we can try and get some intelligence on Russian forces in Odessa, or we may not be able to see forces here, but there's a good chance that we can. Any forces near the coast will be spotted. Now, of course, Russia does have an army that's twice the size of ours, but it has a very large territory, and it is at war with Britain and France. So it's very, very possible that a large part of the Russian army is held back at St. Petersburg and to guard their Baltic provinces. Just a quick update on the war with Sweden. There's nothing significant to report. These are very remote, undeveloped regions, kind of north of Lapland. So it's very difficult for Russia to project its strength here. So we keep an eye on this situation. It may even be the case that we'll see if they've made a peace deal with them. I don't think they have yet, but they may well have. Now, in the east, the Russians have managed to pull back. This is the Imperial Guard, or the Guard Corps unit that they had besieging Trabzon. They've pulled that force back through Batumi. It's made quite good distance, actually, but it was virtually out of supplies. And I realise now the problem with Hussein Avni is, of course, the river line here. I think he's struggling to cross the river line at that time of the year, so simply kind of fell back. He's going to move through Trabzon and into Batumi to kind of try and resecure the front line. I say resecure the front line, the frontier. There's not really a front line at this sort of time. Abdi Pasha is in a defensive posture. For a period of time, we did have sight on another large Russian army. It seems to have kind of vanished now. We can't see it. We can see some Russian forces, but not the really large army, not the large field army that they had. We don't know whether that's been pulled back. There's a really good chance now that Russia might have a much more of a defensive position here. They might start bleeding off troops to bolster their position on the west, which is looking much more kind of dicey. We'll see what happens there. But the east is relatively quiet. The threat to Trabzon has subsided. The Russians have pulled back. They have a cavalry division in Batumi. I think we should be able to deal with that, actually. They can't move from Batumi down towards Erzurum. They'll have to move into Trabzon. And, yeah, as I say, we've got Hussein Avni now moving into position to try and secure that region. So that's the east. Militarily, I think that's all there is to report. We lost a battle. This is a very small force. These are Bashi bazooks. They were designed to fall back, and they've fallen back actually into Kars. The Bashi bazooks are here, so we're going to just sort of reinforce those guys. And they're just the irregular kind of paramilitaries that were guarding Batumi, but they've fallen back in the face of a regular Russian cavalry division. In Aden, the situation is still stable, but we have spotted on the frontier at Hadramut Yemeni columns organised into something resembling a kind of meaningful command. So yeah, they're not done yet, and there's a good chance they might be moving towards Sana'a. We're set to a defensive posture. We're going to be holding at all costs. The plan is to keep this force well and truly at bay until the situation in the north is over, until the Crimea War is over, essentially, and we can send commanders back to this region and continue pacifying it. Some other interesting developments then are, well, in foreign policy, we sent the British diplomats requesting, which we have done before, it's been rejected before, but requesting a commercial agreement, and this time they agreed, and this is excellent news for our economy. A commercial agreement is indefinite duration, so it will only end if we or Russia break it in the agreement, and this will mean that Britain will favour us over any other power that it doesn't have a commercial agreement with in trade deals. So if they need something, they're more likely to buy it from us. If they're selling something and demand outstrips supply, it means they're more likely to sell it to us. So we will have kind of first preference, if you like, and that's especially good news because Britain does not have a trade agreement with any other country, and Britain has the biggest economy in the world by far in 1852. So this is outstanding news for us in terms of exports, and we will certainly begin to see this pay dividends in the long run. My plan was to try and utilise the kind of high watermark of relations between the Ottoman Empire and Britain in the midst of the Crimean War and try and push for this. I pushed for it a couple of times, they rejected it. I've also sent diplomats to France to try and secure the same with France, because they have another significant European power that sort of favours us over other powers in terms of commerce agreements. And also the good news, it looks like France doesn't have commerce agreements with anyone either. So again, that would be excellent for our exports. So this is really good news, actually. It's a really important development. Things like this, in the long run, agreements made by diplomats, they can be more significant than really large battles involving hundreds of thousands of men in terms of the long-term prospect of the state. This commercial agreement is worth an army of 100,000 or 200,000 men in the long run. If it's kept, we have to keep our own relations with the British, but if only for a decade or 2 decades. This would give us an excellent head start in terms of developing an industrial society. And we have to keep in mind that the Ottoman Empire at this stage is still a pre-industrial society. You know, we've made great headway in terms of sort of rooting the economy into kind of, you know, modern, if you like, capitalist relations through the development of capitalist agricultural enterprises. And it has, you know, there has been a significant transformation in the Ottoman economy. You could sort of say that in 1850, January 1850, you know, 90% of the Ottoman Empire was rooted in the kind of guild-based production, the early modern craft production, which is still a dominant feature of the economy. But you could probably now say that accounts for more like 60-70%, whereas the remainder of the economy is based on RGOs, you know, modern kind of capitalist enterprises and this kind of thing. So we can see that there is a shift in the economy, and that will lay the foundations for the Industrial Revolution for us. You know, sort of economic enterprises based on a kind of profit motive and this sort of thing. But we don't quite yet have the technology to build locomotives or complex transportation systems or anything like that. These are sort of theoretical developments that at the moment are relatively alien to Ottoman society. We do have, despite being a pre-industrial society, some fairly concentrated industrial development. Despite that, in Constantinople, we've opened up a textile factory. We've got a modern industrial shipyard being built. This is a shipyard that will be upgraded. I mean, anything that we build will be upgraded over time to reflect developments in technology, but not some technologies also. Academies of Science doesn't just reflect technology; it also reflects developments in techniques, in certain kinds of machinery, threshing machines and gins and this sort of thing, that allow these enterprises to be upgraded. So, you know, a textile factory now produces 2 textiles. In 20 years' time, might produce 10 textiles based on the dramatic developments you see in technique and production efficiency during the Industrial Revolution, linking that up, of course, also to the developments of transportation. These early sort of shipbuilding plants that are industrial in scale are still designed to produce timber ships, of course. You know, like if you look at, for example, some of the things that are required, operational costing include things like wood. I mean, you wouldn't have very much timber use in a kind of shipyard in the 1890s, or relatively little. I would have thought it would be more steel and coal and iron and this sort of thing. So these shipyards will be upgraded in time to reflect the technological shifts in shipbuilding. And we also, of course, have the fortification is being upgraded, which is a significant military kind of development, and we are building another textile factory. These textile factories are not like the mills of the early modern period. They are sort of capitalist factories, and to begin with, are the only kinds of factories that you can build before the Industrial Revolution, really. But, you know, again, I mean, rooting a large part of the wealth of our economy in these kinds of manufactories will serve as a kind of catalyst for the Industrial Revolution. I think that's probably it so far. Russia captures harbour in Batumi. Yeah, of course, that's because the cavalry division has moved through Batumi. In terms of kind of exports, despite that deal with Britain, it's very early doors. The deal has just been signed. It will take time before that begins to kind of show really concrete results. But exports are remaining really, really high. We're still pressing really, really hard. Let's have a look. Exports are sitting at 52 merchandises. A total value of 132. Imports are 92. That's 20 merchandises. I think overwhelmingly steel and manufactured goods. These are commodities that we're continuing to hoard because in terms of early industrial development, these are kind of bottlenecks. We're trying as much as we can not to sell these things in the domestic market. The availability of manufactured goods in the domestic market in the Ottoman Empire is relatively unchanged from the beginning of this game, from like January 1850, and that's intentional. But we actually have more availability of manufactured goods, but we're intentionally choking this off, and it's the only thing we're doing that with. But we're kind of offsetting that by making things like foodstuffs, tobacco, and other kinds of commodities which we can readily produce, much more available. And that's having a really positive, effect. So continuously over a period of time, average satisfaction is climbing because of wide availability of foodstuffs at really good price, and tobacco, and also textiles. Actually, manufactured goods is the only thing that we're intentionally choking off in order to try and hoard this commodity, so that we can develop our industrial base. So I think that's it in terms of the next term. It's going to be interesting. Omar Pasha, so far the superstar of the Crimean War, the kind of celebrity lieutenant general that led a single army corps from Adrianople through Rumelia into Varna, precipitating a collapse of almost an entire Russian army, inflicting 25,000 casualties, getting 25,000 prisoners, destroying 24 Russian regiments, now has the field command of the main Ottoman Imperial Army on the Western Front. He's in command of the most potent force we have ever had in our history, and he is ready, he is set to step onto the stage of history, and we'll see what that delivers in the next turn, and I suspect that he will be carrying all before him, given the state of Russian forces. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.